I never imagined it would come to this, yet there I was, whispering into my phone at 2 in the morning, laughter bubbling from my lips as I sealed my husband's fate. "He's just a pathetic ex-cop," I murmured, reclining against the silk sheets of our bed, my fingers idly tracing the cool surface of my empty champagne glass. "Your men can easily take him out during his morning jog. It'll look like a mugging gone wrong. Quick. Painless. He won't even see it coming." The voice on the other end of the line chuckled. "You sure about this, sweetheart? Sounds like you actually cared about him once." I rolled my eyes. That was a lifetime ago. "Miguel, you know I don't get sentimental. He's dead weight, and I want to move on. He served his purpose, gave me stability when I needed it, but now?" I sighed, feigning regret. "Now he's in the way." Miguel's laughter was low and knowing. "That's why I like you, babe. You know how to cut ties clean." My gaze drifted to the darkened bathroom door, where the sound of running water indicated that my soon-to-be-dead husband was finishing his late-night shower. Ethan had always been meticulous about his routines, his showers, his morning jogs, his insufferable little habits. "Make it happen tomorrow," I pressed. 5:30 a.m. sharp. He always takes the same route, through the east side of the park. There's a blind spot near the construction site. You won't get a better chance. Consider it done. I ended the call just as the water shut off. Ethan stepped into the bedroom moments later, rubbing a towel through his damp hair. His body was still strong, still lean from years on the force, but there was something weary about him these days. The light in his eyes had dulled, replaced by a kind of resigned exhaustion. He sat on the edge of the bed, unaware that I had just arranged his execution. "You're still up?" he asked, his voice rough with fatigue. "Couldn't sleep," I lied easily, shifting beneath the covers. "You were in there forever." "Old injuries," he muttered, stretching his shoulder. "Joints ache more at night." I fought the smirk that threatened to form. "Not for long, sweetheart. You should see a doctor about that," I said instead, my tone laced with concern I didn't feel. Ethan only grunted in response, his back turned to me as he reached for the glass of water on his nightstand. His movements were unhurried, his guard completely lowered. I had to admit, there was a certain satisfaction in knowing just how easy this would be. Tomorrow morning, he'd lace up his running shoes like always. He'd step out onto the pavement, breathing in the crisp morning air, utterly unaware that it would be his last. And when Miguel's men struck, he wouldn't even have time to realize the betrayal before the darkness took him. I turned onto my side, closing my eyes. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. 5:30 a.m. The park. The first sign that something had gone terribly wrong was when Miguel's number flashed across my screen at 5:45 a.m. I frowned, confusion flickering through me. The job should have been done by now. I answered quickly. "Is it done?" The only response was harsh, ragged breathing. Jesus Christ, Olivia, Miguel's voice was nothing like I'd ever heard before. Frantic. Panicked. "What the hell did you get me into?" A chill skittered down my spine. "What are you talking about? What happened?" "They're all dead," he choked out. "All of them." He broke off, his breathing erratic. I gripped the phone tighter. "Miguel, what the hell do you mean they're dead?" "I sent 5 men, Olivia. 5 of my best. They surrounded him just like we planned. It should have been easy. Asterisk. And?" Miguel's next words sent ice through my veins. "And he butchered them, Olivia. Like it was nothing." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Ethan's an ex-cop," I protested, my voice shaking slightly. He's not just a cop, you dumb bitch." Miguel spat. "He's a goddamn ghost. A killer. I don't know what he was before you married him, but my men never stood a chance. I've never seen anything like it. He didn't even have a gun, Liv. He took them apart with his hands. I stared at my reflection in the vanity mirror, my blood turning to ice. That's not possible, I whispered. But deep down, a sick, twisting feeling told me it was. Because for the first time in our marriage, I was starting to realize that I had no idea who my husband really was. Stared at my reflection, the early morning light casting sharp shadows across my face. My skin looked pale, almost translucent, as if the color had been drained along with my sense of control. Miguel's words echoed in my head, a sick, looping chant I couldn't shake. He butchered them, Olivia. Like it was nothing. I gripped the edges of the vanity, my knuckles turning white. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Ethan was supposed to be dead by now, just another unfortunate victim in a city that didn't care about nameless violence. A simple headline in tomorrow's paper, former cop killed in apparent mugging. That was the plan. Clean. Painless. Instead, 5 of Miguel's best men were lying in a park somewhere, their bodies twisted and broken. Ethan was still alive. And worse, he knew. The thought hit me like a physical blow. If he'd survived the ambush, he'd know it wasn't random. Ethan wasn't an idiot. He'd connect the dots. And that meant I was in danger. I forced myself to breathe, inhaling deeply through my nose and exhaling through my mouth. I needed to think, needed to get ahead of this. Panicking wouldn't save me. The bedroom door creaked open behind me. Olivia? His voice was soft, deceptively calm. I turned, schooling my features into something resembling normalcy. Ethan stood in the doorway, wearing his usual running gear, sweat-dampened shirt clinging to his chest, his black jogging pants streaked with dirt. His hands were clean, but there was something in his eyes. Something dark. "You're back early," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Did you cut your run short?" He didn't answer right away. Just stood there, his gaze locked on mine, as if he were trying to peel back my skin and see what was underneath. "Yeah," he said finally, stepping into the room. Something felt off today. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Off? What do you mean? Ethan didn't smile back. He moved to the dresser, pulling out a fresh t-shirt, his back to me. "Just a feeling," he said, his voice low. Like I was being followed. I felt my stomach tighten. "That's strange," I murmured, moving to sit on the edge of the bed, my heart racing. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe. He changed his shirt without another word, the silence stretching thin and taut between us. I could feel the weight of his gaze, even when his back was turned. I needed to get out of the house. I needed to call Miguel, to figure out our next move. "I'm meeting Rachel for brunch," I blurted, standing abruptly. "We're trying that new cafe downtown." Ethan turned then, his expression unreadable. His eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, met mine, and for a moment, I wondered if he already knew. "Sounds nice," he said softly. "Drive safe." I nodded, grabbing my purse and keys, my legs shaky beneath me. As I walked past him, his hand shot out, fingers closing gently around my wrist. I froze. "You're trembling," he murmured, his thumb brushing against my pulse. "Are you feeling okay?" I forced a laugh, pulling my hand free. "Just had too much coffee," I lied. "I'll be fine." I didn't wait for his response. I fled. The moment I was in the car, I dialed Miguel. "What the hell happened?" I hissed the second he answered. "I don't know," he snapped. "It was supposed to be easy. They surrounded him, just like we planned. But it was like he knew they were coming. He moved fast, too fast. They didn't even get a shot off." "And you're sure he's alive?" "Alive and breathing," Miguel confirmed grimly. I was watching from a distance. I barely got away. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my mind racing. "We need to try again," I said. This time, we'll be smarter. Smarter? Miguel barked out a harsh laugh. Olivia, this isn't some clueless ex-cop. This man is dangerous. I've never seen anything like it. My guys weren't amateurs. They were killers. And he wiped the floor with them. I clenched my jaw. I don't care how dangerous he is. I want him dead. There was a pause on the line. It's going to cost you, Miguel said finally. More than we agreed. Fine, I snapped. Whatever it takes. I hung up, my hands trembling. But as I sat there in the silence of my car, a realization settled over me like a cold shadow. This wasn't just about money. Or even betrayal. Ethan wasn't who I thought he was. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't sure if I was the predator or the prey. I didn't go to brunch. I couldn't. Instead, I found myself parked in an empty lot, staring blankly at the cracked windshield of a rusted pickup truck across from me. My hands trembled against the steering wheel, my pulse racing like I'd just sprinted a marathon. I replayed Ethan's face in my mind, those sharp, unreadable eyes, the slight tilt of his head when he'd grabbed my wrist. It wasn't the gesture itself that haunted me. It was the way he did it. So casual, so controlled. Like he wasn't trying to stop me, he was studying me. Does he know? The thought burrowed into my mind like a parasite, refusing to let go. I needed answers. Not from Miguel, not from the incompetent thugs he sent. No. I needed to understand Ethan. Who the hell did I marry? My fingers fumbled with my phone as I pulled up a browser, typing his name into the search bar, Ethan Cross, former NYPD. Old articles popped up, commendations, photos of him in uniform shaking hands with city officials. A decorated officer, they said. A man who'd served with distinction. But that's not what unsettled me. It was the gaps. No details about his early career. No information about his time before joining the NYPD. Just blank spaces. Why? Frustrated, I dug deeper, sifting through obscure links and outdated forums until one name kept popping up alongside his, Miguel. I froze. Not my Miguel. No, this was something else entirely. Military Intelligence Group. An elite Black Ops division rumored to handle operations that didn't officially exist. Assassinations. Covert hits. Ghost work. And Ethan's name was connected to it. My heart slammed against my chest. The realization hit me like a freight train. I hadn't married an ex-cop. I'd married a weapon. By the time I got home, dusk had settled over the neighborhood, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. I parked the car, my mind buzzing with questions I couldn't answer. As I approached the front door, I hesitated. The house, our house, felt different. Heavier. Like the walls themselves were listening. I forced myself inside. Ethan was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with a precision that made my skin crawl. The rhythmic thunk-thunk-thunk of the knife against the cutting board echoed through the space, too steady, too calm. He glanced up when he saw me, offering that same familiar smile, the one I used to find comforting. But now? Now it felt like the grin of a predator. "You're back early," he remarked, wiping his hands on a towel. I forced a smile. "Rachel canceled." "Shame," he replied smoothly. "I was thinking of grilling tonight." I nodded, moving to the sink to wash my hands, acutely aware of his presence behind me. His movements were fluid, controlled. Like a man who never truly relaxed. As we ate dinner, I tried to act normal, but the food tasted like ash in my mouth. "You seem tense," Ethan observed casually, his fork pausing halfway to his lips. I forced a laugh. "Just work stuff." His gaze lingered on me a moment longer than necessary before he returned to his plate. I couldn't take it. The walls felt like they were closing in. I'm going to bed early, I announced, standing abruptly. Long day. Ethan simply nodded, his expression unreadable. But as I climbed the stairs, I felt his eyes on my back the entire time. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. I needed a plan. Miguel was useless. If Ethan really was some kind of Black Ops assassin, sending more hired guns would be like throwing pebbles at a hurricane. I needed an edge. That's when it hit me, his safe. Ethan kept a small safe in his office downstairs. He claimed it was for important documents, tax records, that sort of thing. But now I wasn't so sure. I waited until I heard the shower running before I crept downstairs, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he'd hear it. The office door creaked slightly as I pushed it open. His safe was tucked beneath the desk, small and black with a simple keypad. I tried his usual code, our anniversary. Nothing. I swallowed hard, trying his badge number from his NYPD days. Still nothing. Think, Olivia. I glanced around the room, my eyes landing on a framed photo of us from our honeymoon. We were laughing, carefree. The photo felt like a relic from a life that never really existed. I typed in the date from the photo's timestamp. Click. The safe opened. Inside, I expected documents, maybe a gun. What I didn't expect were the passports. 3 of them. All with Ethan's face. All with different names. There was a stack of foreign currency, a silenced pistol, and a small flash drive. I grabbed the drive, shoving it into my pocket just as I heard the shower cut off upstairs. I slammed the safe shut and sprinted back to the bedroom, diving under the covers just as Ethan stepped into the room, a towel slung around his waist. His eyes met mine in the dim light, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Couldn't sleep, he asked softly. No, I whispered, my heart still racing. He crossed the room, leaning down to kiss my forehead. His lips were warm, gentle. But all I could think was, does he know I opened the safe? And if he does, what is he going to do about it? I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, motionless, my eyes fixed on the ceiling while Ethan's breathing grew slow and steady beside me. His arm was draped over my waist like a protective gesture, but it felt more like a shackle. Every inhale pressed his warmth against me, every exhale whispered reminders of what I'd seen, those passports, the gun, and the flash drive now hidden beneath the mattress on my side of the bed. Who are you, Ethan? When the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, I carefully slipped out from under his arm, feigning the careful movements of someone trying not to wake their sleeping husband. But Ethan wasn't just anyone, he wasn't the exhausted, clueless ex-cop I once believed he was. He's something else entirely. I paused by the door, heart thudding. He didn't stir. I made my way downstairs, my legs shaky as if they could collapse at any second. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. The normalcy of it all felt obscene. In the office, I locked the door behind me and yanked the flash drive from my robe pocket, shoving it into Ethan's laptop. The screen lit up, asking for a password. I cursed under my breath. I tried the basics. Our wedding date. His NYPD badge number. My birthday. Nothing. Then, on a whim, I typed MIG. Access granted. The folder structure was simple, too simple. One folder labeled Contingency. I clicked it. Videos. Dozens of them. Surveillance footage. Most of them labeled with names I didn't recognize. But one folder stood out, Olivia Cross. My heart stuttered. I clicked. The first video was from the cafe downtown, my cafe, the one I'd told Ethan I was meeting Rachel at the day before. The timestamp matched. The footage showed me sitting alone, nervously checking my phone. No Rachel. No brunch. Because I'd lied. Another video, this one from 2 days prior, showed me leaving a hotel. Alone. But I wasn't alone inside that hotel. Miguel had been with me. I swallowed hard, clicking the next file. It was audio. A recording. "He's just a pathetic ex-cop," my own voice hissed from the laptop speakers. "Your men can easily take him out during his morning jog." I slammed the laptop shut, my hands trembling. He knew. He's always known. I stumbled back from the desk, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I had to get out of the house. Now. I crept upstairs, my mind racing. Ethan was still in bed, or at least, I hoped he was. I tiptoed into the bedroom, my eyes darting to the lump under the covers. Still there. I grabbed my bag, stuffing the flash drive deep inside, then slipped on a hoodie to hide my shaking. I crept toward the door. "Going somewhere?" His voice was soft, but it hit me like a gunshot. I froze. Slowly, I turned. Ethan was sitting up in bed, his eyes dark and unreadable, the sheet pooling around his waist. His posture was relaxed, too relaxed. Like a lion who knows the antelope has nowhere to run. "Couldn't sleep," I stammered. "Thought I'd grab coffee." He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "At 6 in the morning?" His lips curled into a faint smile. "Must be some craving." I forced a laugh, clutching my bag tighter. "Want me to come with you?" he asked, already swinging his legs over the side of the bed. "No." I blurted out, too fast, too loud. I cleared my throat. "I mean, you were sleeping. I didn't want to bother you." His gaze lingered on me, and for a moment, I thought he'd call my bluff. But instead, he nodded. "All right, babe." He leaned back, stretching, his muscles taut under his skin. "Drive safe." I fled. I didn't stop driving until I hit the city limits. My mind was a storm, fragmented thoughts colliding with one another. He knows. He's been watching me. I pulled into a gas station, my hands trembling as I shoved the flash drive into my laptop again, desperate to make sense of it all. This time, I found a hidden folder labeled, "Failsafe." Inside was a document, just one. A list. At the top, primary target, Olivia Cross. My name. Bold. Underlined. Underneath were detailed notes. Monitoring for suspicious behavior. Evidence of infidelity confirmed. Contact with known criminal, Miguel Santos. Attempted contract hit on Ethan Cross. The final line made my blood run cold. Asset compromised. Contingency protocol initiated. Contingency protocol. What the hell did that mean? Then I remembered the folder's name. Failsafe. I slammed the laptop shut, my breath ragged. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a target. And Ethan wasn't planning to confront me. He was planning to eliminate me. I sat in the gas station parking lot, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. The early morning sun crept over the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched like claws across the asphalt. Asset compromised. Contingency protocol initiated. Those words flashed in my mind, over and over again. I was the asset. The contingency was me. I thought I had control. I thought I was smart, clever enough to manipulate Ethan, to lie to his face, to plot his death while sharing the same bed. But I was nothing more than a line item on one of his cold, clinical lists. A target. I squeezed the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, my mind racing with one desperate question. How long do I have before he makes his move? I had to think. Fast. Miguel. I yanked my phone from my bag and dialed his number, my fingers trembling. He answered on the third ring, his voice groggy, laced with irritation. Olivia? Do you know what time it is? Miguel, I hissed, glancing around as if Ethan could appear any second. It's not safe. He knows. He's been watching me, us. I found surveillance videos. Recordings. Everything. There was a pause, then Miguel's voice grew sharp. Calm down. Where are you? I don't know, a gas station off Route 7. I had to get out of the house. He's planning something. I'm not safe. Listen to me, Miguel said, his tone switching to something colder, more calculating. Stay put. I'll send someone to get you. We'll figure this out. I hesitated. Miguel had already failed once. His men, 5 of them, were dead. What could he do now? Could I even trust him? But what choice did I have? Hurry, I whispered before hanging up. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, my face pale, my eyes hollow. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. What have I done? The black SUV arrived 30 minutes later, pulling up beside my car with tinted windows that gleamed like obsidian in the morning light. The driver's side window rolled down, revealing a man I didn't recognize. Olivia, he asked. I nodded cautiously. Miguel sent me. Get in. Against every screaming instinct, I climbed into the SUV, clutching my bag like a lifeline. The man didn't speak as he drove, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. Where's Miguel? I asked after a few tense minutes. Safe house. His answer was clipped, emotionless. I stared out the window, the scenery blurring past. But the further we drove, the more something felt wrong. We weren't heading toward the city. I sat up straighter. Where are we going? The man didn't answer. I glanced at the dashboard, no GPS, no phone in sight. My pulse quickened. Where the hell are we going? I snapped, my voice sharper now. Still nothing. That's when I knew. This wasn't a rescue. It was a cleanup. Miguel wasn't sending help. He was sending someone to tie up loose ends, me. My heart raced as I fumbled with my bag, pretending to search for something while my fingers curled around the small canister of pepper spray I'd thrown in there months ago, long forgotten until now. Without warning, I sprayed it directly into the driver's face. He screamed, the SUV swerving violently off the road. I didn't wait, I kicked the door open and rolled out, hitting the gravel hard. Pain shot through my shoulder, but I scrambled to my feet and ran. Behind me, the driver stumbled out of the SUV, coughing and cursing, his hand reaching for something, a gun. I didn't look back. I just ran. I found refuge in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, collapsing behind a stack of crates, my chest heaving. My mind spun in chaotic circles. Miguel wanted me dead. Ethan wanted me dead. I had no one. I pulled out the flash drive again, staring at it like it held the answers to my survival. There had to be something, some clue, some leverage I could use. I powered on my laptop, my fingers shaking as I navigated the folders. I found a new one I hadn't seen before, hidden deep within layers of encrypted files. Operation Meridian. I clicked. Inside were detailed documents, classified reports, images, names. Ethan's face appeared again, but not as Ethan Cross. His real name was something else entirely. Agent Cade Mercer. Missions. Targets. Eliminations. And one familiar name on the list of targets, Miguel Santos. My breath hitched. Ethan wasn't just trying to kill me. This was bigger. Miguel wasn't the predator I thought he was. He was prey, just like me. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Running is pointless. I'll find you. No name. No need for one. Ethan. I dropped the phone, my heart slamming against my ribs. I wasn't hiding from a man. I was hiding from a monster. And he was already closing in. The warehouse was cold, dark, and smelled faintly of rust and rot, a fitting place to hide when you're running from the man you once called your husband. My back pressed against the cold metal crate, every muscle tense as if my body knew what my mind refused to accept. Ethan was coming. No, not Ethan. Cade Mercer. The name felt foreign, like it belonged to a stranger. But that was the horrifying part, wasn't it? He was a stranger. The man I'd shared my life with, whose face I kissed every morning, wasn't who I thought he was. And now, he was hunting me. I stared at the text on my phone. Running is pointless. I'll find you. My fingers trembled, but not from the cold. Fear had a taste now, metallic and bitter, thick in the back of my throat. I knew I couldn't sit there forever. I needed a plan. Miguel was useless, probably dead or soon to be. The only thing I had was the flash drive, and whatever secrets it held. I opened the laptop again, diving deeper into the folder labeled Operation Meridian. My heart pounded with every click, expecting Ethan's, Cade's, face to appear behind me at any second. One file caught my eye, Termination Protocols. I clicked. Inside was a list. Names. Faces. Locations. Detailed dossiers on targets, some crossed out in red. Miguel's name was there. Mine wasn't. Yet. But what froze me was the note under Miguel's file. Target active. Secondary asset compromised. Cleanup required. Secondary asset. That was me. I wasn't even his primary concern. Just collateral damage. My vision blurred with rage. For years, I thought I was the one in control, manipulating, scheming. But it was all a lie. A game he'd been playing long before I even realized I was a piece on the board. But if he thought I'd go down easy, he didn't know me at all. I left the warehouse just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, crimson streaks across the sky. It felt symbolic somehow, as if the world itself bled for me. My car was long gone, probably tracked the moment I fled the house. So, I kept to the shadows, cutting through back alleys and deserted streets, my bag clutched tight with the flash drive inside. I needed a place he wouldn't expect. Somewhere I could think. The old safe house. It was a stretch, but Miguel had taken me there once, a rundown apartment above a closed pawn shop. He used it when things got messy. If he was still alive, maybe he'd be there. If not, well, at least it had locks. I arrived just after midnight, picking the lock with shaky hands. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, dusty room lit only by the flickering neon sign from the street below. I locked the door behind me, my back sliding down until I hit the floor. The silence was deafening. But not for long. My phone buzzed again. No caller ID. I didn't want to answer. Every instinct screamed to throw the phone out the window. But curiosity, or maybe defiance, won. I answered. Olivia. His voice was calm. Steady. That same voice that used to whisper I love you in the dark. Now it sounded like a death sentence. Stop running, he said softly. You're not good at it. I clenched my jaw. What do you want? He chuckled, actually chuckled, as if this was all some game. It's not about what I want. It's about balance. You upset that balance, Liv. You killed 5 men. My voice cracked with disbelief, even though I'd seen the aftermath with my own eyes. You murdered them like it was nothing. It was nothing, he replied smoothly. They were a problem. Problems get solved. My hands trembled, but I refused to let him hear the fear. And what am I, Ethan? A problem? Silence. Then, you were a solution once. His words cut deeper than any blade could. I trusted you, I whispered, tears burning at the edges of my vision. That was your first mistake, he said quietly. Your second was thinking you could outplay me. The call disconnected. I stared at the phone, my chest tight with fury and fear tangled together. But under it all was something else, a spark. Not of hope. Of resolve. He wanted a game? Fine. But I'd change the rules. I spent the next hour scouring the flash drive again, looking for anything I could use. And that's when I found it, a video file buried deep in the encrypted folders. It was surveillance footage. Of me. But not from recent weeks. This was from years ago. Before I even met Ethan. I watched, frozen, as the video showed me at a cafe, laughing with friends. Another clip of me at a work conference. Another, walking alone at night, unaware of the shadow trailing just out of frame. He'd been watching me long before we met. Our meeting wasn't chance. Our marriage wasn't love. It was all part of his plan. But why? That's when I saw it, a document attached to the video file. A report titled, Asset Acquisition, Olivia Santos. My maiden name. I clicked. The report detailed everything, my background, my family, my ties to Miguel. I wasn't just a target. I was a tool. He married me to get to Miguel. A sob escaped before I could stop it. My entire life, a lie. But if Ethan thought he'd broken me, he was wrong. I wasn't broken. I was awake. And now, I was going to kill him. The realization settled over me like a suffocating fog, pressing against my chest, stealing the breath from my lungs. Ethan, or rather, Cade Mercer, never loved me. I wasn't his wife. I was his assignment. Every kiss, every whispered promise, every fleeting moment of intimacy, fabricated. Carefully designed to keep me close, to control me. To use me. But as much as the betrayal carved deep into my soul, something darker began to rise from beneath the heartbreak, rage. I wiped the tears from my face, my fingers trembling as they brushed against the edge of the flash drive still connected to the laptop. That little device had become both a curse and a weapon. Inside it were not just pieces of Ethan's, or Cade's, dark past, but also the blueprints of his life, his connections, his weaknesses. And maybe, just maybe, the key to ending him. The safe house was eerily quiet, save for the occasional creak of old wood settling. The flickering neon light outside cast long, shifting shadows on the cracked walls, making the darkness feel alive, watching me. I forced myself to focus, combing through the encrypted files again. If Cade had been watching me long before we met, then this wasn't just about Miguel. There had to be more, a reason I was targeted, beyond being a pawn. There's always a reason. And then I found it. A folder buried so deep I almost missed it, Project Eden. My heart raced as I clicked it open. Inside were dossiers, detailed profiles of people tied to organized crime, political corruption, military secrets. But one file caught my attention. It wasn't a criminal or a politician. It was me. The document detailed everything, my family history, my childhood, my education. But what froze me was the section labeled Known Connections, Miguel Santos alias Santiago Cortez. Miguel wasn't just some small-time fixer. He was connected to something bigger. And through him, so was I. That's why Cade married me. Not for me, but for access. To Miguel. To his network. I was the key to unlocking doors Cade couldn't force open on his own. But now that Miguel was compromised, I was expendable. I didn't sleep. By morning, my mind was clear, sharpened by the bitterness of betrayal and the cold precision of anger. I wasn't going to wait for Cade to find me. I was going to find him first. I gathered what little I had, my bag, the flash drive, and the small pistol I'd found stashed in a drawer at the safe house. It felt foreign in my hands, but the weight of it was strangely comforting. I left the apartment, blending into the city's early morning bustle. But every shadow felt like it was watching me, every stranger a potential threat. I needed an edge. I needed Miguel. Finding him wasn't hard. The safe house was a decoy, I should have known. Miguel was too paranoid to stay in one place for long, especially with Cade hunting him. But I remembered something, a storage facility he once mentioned, offhandedly, during one of our late-night rendezvous. Always gotta have a backup plan, he'd said with a smirk, and a place to hide when things get ugly. Things were ugly now. The facility was on the outskirts of the city, a nondescript building that looked abandoned. Perfect for someone like Miguel. I picked the lock and slipped inside, the faint smell of dust and oil filling my nose. The hallways were dark, lit only by the weak sunlight seeping through cracks in the boarded-up windows. I found him in the back, slouched against a crate, a gun resting loosely in his hand. "Took you long enough," he muttered without looking up. I didn't hesitate. I marched straight up to him and slammed the barrel of my pistol against his temple. "You lied to me." Miguel didn't flinch. He just sighed and turned his head slightly, his dark eyes meeting mine with a mixture of exhaustion and resignation. "About what, exactly?" he asked dryly. "I've lied about a lot of things. I wanted to pull the trigger right then and there. But killing him wouldn't give me the answers I needed." I stepped back, lowering the gun slightly. "Cade was never just some ex-cop," I snapped. "You knew that, didn't you?" Miguel stood slowly, wincing as if every movement hurt. He had a fresh cut above his brow and bruises darkening his jaw, signs that Cade had probably been here before me. "Of course I knew," he said, brushing dust off his jacket. "Cade Mercer wasn't just some cop. He's a ghost. A shadow the government uses when they need to erase people. And you?" He gave me a bitter smile. "You were his way in." His words hit me harder than any slap. "Why me?" My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay strong. "What the hell do I have that was worth all this?" Miguel's smile faded. "Access," he replied simply. "To me. To my contacts. To information Cade's handlers wanted." I staggered back, the weight of the truth almost too much to bear. "So what now?" I whispered. Miguel's eyes darkened. "Now?" He picked up his gun, checking the magazine. "Now, we kill him before he kills us." We spent the next few hours planning, piecing together what little we knew. Miguel had contacts, people who owed him favors, but none of them could stand against someone like Cade. "You don't fight him head-on," Miguel explained. "You outthink him. Use his strengths against him." I nodded, but deep down, I knew the truth. You don't outthink a monster like Cade Mercer. You kill him. And I was going to be the one to do it. Cade was out there. Watching. Waiting. That thought clung to me like a shadow I couldn't shake, even as Miguel and I holed up in yet another rundown hideout, a forgotten motel just outside the city, the kind of place no one cared to look twice at. Peeling wallpaper, flickering neon lights, and the faint stench of mildew. Fitting, considering the rot that had seeped into every corner of my life. Miguel paced the room like a caged animal, a gun never more than an arm's length away. His face was bruised from whatever encounter he'd had with Cade before I found him, and though he tried to mask it with arrogance, I could see the fear lurking behind his eyes. "You can't just wait him out," I snapped, breaking the tense silence. "You've seen what he's capable of. He's not going to stop until we're both dead." Miguel stopped pacing, his jaw clenched. "I know." I leaned forward, my fingers tightening around the cold metal of the pistol in my lap. It still felt foreign, but the weight was becoming familiar, a grim comfort. "Then we take the fight to him," I said, my voice steady. "But not like before. This time, we don't send hired guns. We use something stronger." Miguel raised an eyebrow. "Stronger than bullets?" "What, exactly?" I met his gaze, the answer already burning in my mind. "Me. The plan was simple. I'd be the bait. Cade wasn't afraid of me. That was his mistake. He saw me as weak collateral damage, just another loose end to tie up. He underestimated me. And that was going to get him killed. We set the trap at an old industrial site Miguel's contacts once used for covert deals, a maze of crumbling buildings, rusted pipes, and broken glass. The perfect place for an ambush. Miguel positioned himself with a sniper rifle from one of the higher vantage points, covering the perimeter. I stayed below, out in the open, the flash drive in my hand like a beacon. I knew he'd come for it. Not because he needed it, but because he knew I had it. And Cade Mercer didn't leave evidence or witnesses behind. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the concrete wasteland. I stood there, heart pounding, my breath visible in the chilly evening air. Every creak of metal, every whisper of wind set my nerves on edge. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Deliberate. Controlled. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. You've been busy, Liv. Cade's voice drifted through the empty space, smooth and unbothered, like he was greeting an old friend. Running. Hiding. Plotting. I clenched the flash drive tighter, forcing my voice to remain steady. Didn't expect me to put up a fight, did you? I shot back. He chuckled, a low, dark sound that made my skin crawl. You were never meant to fight. You were meant to be convenient. His footsteps grew closer. But here we are. I slowly turned to face him. Cade stood just a few feet away, dressed in dark tactical gear, his posture relaxed as if this was just another day at the office. But his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were locked on me with deadly precision. No hesitation. No remorse. Just focus. You used me, I said, my voice sharper now, the rage simmering beneath my fear. You married me to get to Miguel. Cade tilted his head slightly, as if considering my words. I married you because it was efficient, he replied simply. And because you made it easy. That hit harder than any punch. But I didn't let it show. Funny, I muttered, lifting the flash drive slightly, because I've got something you want. His gaze flicked to the drive, then back to me. I don't need it, he said, taking a slow step forward. I just need to make sure you're not breathing. That was Miguel's cue. The sharp crack of a gunshot echoed through the air, but Cade moved before the bullet even came close, like he'd expected it. He dove behind cover, returning fire with terrifying precision. I scrambled, diving for cover behind a rusted metal beam as bullets tore through the space where I'd been standing seconds ago. Miguel's voice crackled in my earpiece, filled with panic. He's fast, too fast. I can't get a clean shot. Keep him pinned down. I shouted back, my heart racing. But Cade didn't stay pinned for long. He hunted us like prey. I could hear his footsteps shifting, closing the distance. His shadow flickered across the concrete, and then, silence. Too quiet. I peeked out from behind the beam, my pistol gripped tightly in both hands. And there he was. Behind me. I spun, firing wildly, but he was faster, always faster. He knocked the gun from my hands with a brutal strike, sending me sprawling to the ground. Before I could react, he was on me, his knee pressed into my chest, one hand wrapped around my throat. You were never supposed to matter this much, he hissed, tightening his grip. But now you're just a problem to solve. My vision blurred, darkness creeping in at the edges. But then, another shot. Cade jerked back, a pained grunt escaping his lips. Miguel's bullet had found its mark, his shoulder. It wasn't enough to kill him. But it was enough to save me. I gasped for air, scrambling for the fallen pistol. My fingers closed around the grip just as Cade lunged again. I fired. Once. Twice. 3 times. He collapsed, his body hitting the ground with a sickening thud, his eyes still locked on mine. Not with fear. Not with regret. Just surprise. I stood over him, my chest heaving, the pistol shaking in my hands. You underestimated me, I whispered. His lips twitched into a faint, bloody smile. No, he rasped. I made you. Then his eyes went blank. Miguel found me minutes later, his face pale, his arm bleeding from a stray shot. Is he started to ask. I nodded. He's gone. But as I stared at Cade's lifeless body, I wasn't sure if I felt relief. Because deep down, I knew the truth. He was right. He did make me. And I wasn't the same woman anymore. I was something else entirely. The smell of gunpowder still lingered in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of blood as I stood over Cade's lifeless body. His eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes, were frozen open, glassy and unblinking, staring at nothing. But even in death, it felt like he was still watching me. Miguel staggered to my side, clutching his bleeding arm, his face pale and slick with sweat. He didn't say anything for a long time. Just stared at the body on the ground, his chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. Is it over? He finally whispered. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Cade's body might have been broken, but the echoes of what he'd done, the web of lies, manipulation, and blood, still wrapped around me like chains. How do you kill a man who was never really alive to begin with? We didn't stay long. Miguel helped me drag Cade's body to the edge of the industrial site, tossing it into an old, rusted incinerator used years ago for burning scrap. The irony wasn't lost on me, turning him into ash, the same way he'd burned through my life without a second thought. Miguel poured gasoline over the corpse, his hands trembling slightly as he lit the match. The flames roared to life, swallowing the man who had destroyed everything I thought I knew. But as I watched the fire consume him, I realized something that chilled me more than the night air. Cade Mercer wasn't just a man. He was a shadow. A ghost. And ghosts don't burn. They linger. We drove in silence. Miguel's arm was bandaged with scraps of cloth, his face grim and hollow. I stared out the cracked windshield, the city lights blurring as we sped past them, my mind as fractured as the reflection on the glass. What now? Miguel finally asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. I didn't respond. Because the truth was, I didn't know. Cade was dead, but the life I'd built around him was already gone. There was nothing left to go back to. No home. No identity. Just a woman shaped by betrayal, standing in the wreckage of the lies she'd once believed. But as the night stretched on, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't over. Cade had been a weapon. A tool. But weapons don't wield themselves. Someone had sent him after me. After Miguel. And if they sent him once, they'd send someone else. We found refuge in a rundown motel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions because no one cared enough to. Miguel collapsed onto one of the twin beds, groaning as the adrenaline wore off, leaving only pain in its wake. I sat on the edge of the other bed, staring at the flash drive, the same one that had started all of this. It felt heavier now, like it carried not just secrets, but the weight of every life destroyed because of it. I plugged it into my laptop again, my fingers trembling as I navigated through the encrypted files. There had to be more. More answers. More lies. I found another hidden folder, buried deep beneath layers of code. Echo Protocol. I clicked. Inside were files detailing operations I couldn't even begin to understand, black sites, covert missions, names of people who didn't officially exist. But one file caught my attention. It was labeled with a date. Tomorrow. My heart raced as I opened it. Coordinates. A meeting. A list of targets. And at the top of that list, my name. They're not done, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the hum of the broken heater. Miguel stirred, wincing as he sat up. What do you mean? I turned the laptop toward him, the screen glowing in the dim room. This wasn't just Cade. There's more. Whoever was pulling his strings, they're still out there. And they're coming. Miguel's face hardened. Then we hit them first. I nodded, my fear drowned out by something colder. Sharper. Determination. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. Cade might have been the weapon. But now, I was the trigger. And I was going to pull it. We spent the next few hours planning. Mapping out the coordinates, gathering what little gear we had left. Miguel made calls to contacts he'd hoped he'd never have to reach out to again, people who existed in the spaces between governments, the shadows beneath the surface. But even with their help, I knew one thing for certain. If I wanted to end this, I'd have to do it myself. The sun began to rise, casting a dull gray light over the cracked ceiling. Miguel checked his weapon, loading the last of his ammo. You sure about this? He asked, his voice low. I stared at him, then at the gun in my hand. I was sure the day he married me. The final confrontation wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming the pieces of myself Cade had tried to destroy. About showing the people who thought they could control me that I was more than just a pawn in their game. I was the one flipping the board. And when it was over, when the dust settled and the bodies lay where they deserved to be, there would be no doubt left. Not in their minds. Not in mine. I was done being a target. Now, I was the hunter. The sky was a dull, oppressive gray as we approached the coordinates from the flash drive. It wasn't the kind of morning where the sun dared to rise, it felt like even the universe knew what was about to happen. Miguel sat beside me in the stolen SUV, his face grim and set like stone. His arm was bandaged from the bullet wound, but he never complained. Neither of us did. Pain was just part of the process now, like breathing. I gripped the pistol in my lap, my fingers curled around it as if it were the only thing anchoring me to reality. In a way, it was. You still have time to walk away, Miguel muttered, breaking the silence. His voice was rough, not out of concern but practicality. This isn't your fight anymore. I turned to him, my jaw tightening. It's always been my fight. Because this wasn't just about Cade anymore. It wasn't even about Miguel. It was about the people who thought they could play God with other people's lives, pulling strings from the shadows, leaving wreckage in their wake. I'd been the wreckage. Now I was the storm. The location was an abandoned government facility, one of those forgotten places that never made it onto official maps. Faded security signs hung crookedly, warnings long since ignored. The fences were rusted, the gates left ajar like an invitation. We didn't knock. Miguel took point, his movements sharp despite his injuries. I followed, every step silent, my senses dialed up to 11. My heartbeat was a metronome, steady but fierce, a drumbeat of survival. We slipped through the shadows of the derelict building, each darkened hallway a tomb waiting to be filled. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the faint buzz of flickering lights overhead. Then we saw them. Armed men, mercenaries, not soldiers. Too sloppy, too cocky. They weren't expecting a fight. That was their first mistake. Miguel opened fire first, dropping the first two with clean headshots before they even knew we were there. I moved with him, not behind, my pistol steady as I took out the third man who tried to raise his weapon. The gunshot echoed like a punctuation mark in the empty hall. I didn't hesitate. Not anymore. We pushed deeper into the facility, following the trail of blood and bodies we left behind. They kept coming, more men, more guns, but it didn't matter. We were past the point of fear. Miguel and I moved like clockwork, covering each other without words, our unspoken rage driving us forward. But this wasn't just about survival. This was an execution. Finally, we reached a reinforced door, slightly ajar, voices murmuring inside. Miguel glanced at me, his face pale with sweat, his breathing ragged. "This is it," he whispered. I nodded, my grip tightening on the gun. "No survivors." He didn't argue. We kicked the door open, guns blazing. The room was filled with men in suits, not soldiers, the real enemies. The ones who never pulled triggers themselves, who paid others to get blood on their hands. Their arrogance evaporated the moment the first bullet flew. I didn't aim for legs. I didn't give warnings. They deserved none. By the time the smoke cleared, the room was a massacre, bodies sprawled, blood seeping into the cracked concrete floor. I stood there, chest heaving, my ears ringing from the gunfire. Miguel leaned against the wall, sliding down slowly, his breath ragged. "It's done," he gasped. But it wasn't. Not yet. I spotted a man crawling toward a gun, his expensive suit soaked in blood. He looked up at me, his face twisted with fear, the same fear they'd put in me for so long. "Please," he begged, his voice shaking. I was just following orders. I raised my pistol, aiming between his eyes. "So was he," I whispered, thinking of Cade. And I pulled the trigger. The aftermath was a blur. We left the facility burning, the flames swallowing the evidence of everything that had happened there, everything they'd done. Miguel didn't make it far. His injuries were too severe. I held his hand as he bled out in the back seat of the SUV, his grip weak but defiant until the very end. "Guess I'm not bulletproof after all," he joked with a faint, bloody smile. I didn't cry. I'd run out of tears a long time ago. Now I'm alone. No home. No name. Just the weight of what I've done, and what was done to me. But I'm not afraid anymore. They thought they could control me, that I'd break like all the others. But I didn't break. I changed. And in the quiet moments, when the world is still and the ghosts creep back in, I think of Cade, his smile, his lies, his death. He was right about one thing. I made you. Yes, he did. But I finished the job.